We talked about Dallas, Miami, and now we're going to look at the game, but the other huge game, and this is the biggest game of the weekend, and certainly one of the biggest games of the season. It could be a Super Bowl preview. A lot of people think that. San Francisco and Baltimore. The game is in San Francisco. And Rob, in addition to it being the two teams with the best record in the league, which of course is 11-3, it also has the two front runners for the MVP, Brock Purdy and Lamar Jackson. And it's interesting because they're really two entirely different types of players. Not even in just style, Rob, but in if you just straight use the term valuable, which generally we don't, if we keep it real, we don't when we vote for these awards. It's generally the most outstanding player on the best team. And I think that's fine. It doesn't have to be the best team, but I say most outstanding player on one of the best teams in the league. And that kind of goes across the sports, Rob, certainly football and basketball. I don't really have a problem with that because theoretically, Rob, the most valuable, if we just took it literally, the most valuable player could be on a team that wins 50% of its games. You know what I mean? But the guy's so great, but he just has absolutely no help. So I'm fine with kind of the way it's become defined as just kind of most outstanding player on one of the best teams. But Brock Purdy is really one of a group. As you like to say, Rob, I mean, the quarterback is the one touching the ball every play.
Right.
He's the one throwing it. He's the one, he gets it to all those great players, Debo, McCaffrey, Kittle. But they got a lot of great players elsewhere too. And they're veterans who have been more decorated than him. So he's kind of viewed as, the little brother who does a great job.
Well, he's the Johnny-come-lately. They've been having success already. So it's not like they were a middling team, Chris, or also ran and he showed up and then they became this juggernaut. That's not what happened. And that's what people have to understand when people look at the 49ers. They've been doing this for a couple of years now.
And on the other hand, Lamar is the exact opposite, Rob. I think, Rob, probably if you go with the premise that the quarterback is the most valuable player in football.
Just because he's involved in every play. You know what I mean?
Play.
Right, like offensively.
I would have to say I think the three most valuable players in the league would be, and this is not in order, but Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Josh Allen. I think those guys, if you take each one of them off of their teams, I think they are markedly different. To the point where they might not even be playoff teams. Those three, their systems are based on them. You fear them because of those three individuals. They're dangerous because of those three individuals. Everything revolves around them. And so that's kind of what you're looking at in this situation. So and Lamar's different from Josh and Patrick in that you can judge those two a lot by their numbers because they're primarily passing quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson throws it more than he used to, but so much of his danger and threat to the opponent and effectiveness is either him running the football or the threat of him, the fear of him running the football. And so I don't think he can be fully judged by his numbers. And I think that's kind of a credit to people having him second right now in the MVP.
Because they're looking
people
past
are kind of looking at the game. Yeah,
they're looking at it to understand. And Randy Mueller, Chris, said it the other day. You know what I mean? He's a guy who looks at the game a little bit different, right? As a former executive and GM. And he has Lamar as his pick. And it's for those reasons that a lot of things you just brought up. He affects so many things and opens up so many things for other people that it's hard to just put a number or look at just number and say, you got to have this. If they're not coming from behind, he doesn't have to throw the ball 40 times. Their defense, right? There's a lot of things you have to look at.
Yeah. I mean, and he's only thrown it 40 times once this year. But he's just not that type of player anyway.
Right. No, you don't want him to throw the ball 40 times. Right.
60%. Yeah, I mean, so I hear you in the defense, when they get ahead, then you're going to run the football, but that's just not really his game anyway. And it's interesting. I mean, it'll be interesting, Rob, to see how the voters look at this because, yes, you can look at his game and the eye test, but the fact is numbers do matter too.
See,
I was talking to Rob, and I kind of compared him, and I said, and I prefaced it with this, like, he's not this guy because this guy is the greatest winner in American sports history. And Lamar hasn't even yet won 2 playoff games. So I'm not saying he's on this level or anything like that. But like Bill Russell, Rob, his numbers weren't certain. He averaged 15 points a game for his career. He shot 44% from the floor. All right. And now his defensive numbers, they didn't even keep blocks, but obviously blocked a lot of shots. And his rebounding numbers were huge, basically second only to Wilt. But, you couldn't really judge his game just by saying, oh, he only averages 15 points. You know what I mean? And so I think Lamar could kind of be in that type. Again, I'm not saying he's Bill Russell. Bill Russell just won way too much for Lamar to be compared to him. But a type of guy that, does it differently. And you can't judge him just by saying, oh, he threw for 300 yards or didn't throw for 300 yards. Or, wow, he threw 4 touchdown passes. He may have only thrown 1 and run for 1. But he controlled the game. The defense was on edge because of him. And the run game. Rob, their run game is best in the league. They lost their number 1 running back. Was it the first game? Dobbins? And now they've lost Mitchell, who was playing great, Keaton Mitchell. And, I mean, they're like on their 3rd and 4th running backs, and nothing changes. A lot of that is because of Lamar. Like, no matter who their running backs are, they run the ball well. And none of them are big-name guys. And so that's kind of a comparison I would throw out there.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And you're right. He hasn't won nearly as much as Bill Russell did, but I get it. Bill Russell didn't have the gaudy numbers that Wilt had, but he did what the team needed him to do, right? Yep. Would you say that? That's fair.
And the team was built around him.
Right. And
like it was built around Bill Russell. And obviously they're built around Lamar Jackson.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. In this game, Chris, how much do you think this game is going to determine the MVP? Because it could have a big effect as to who wins it. And like we talked about it before about the Mookie Betts and Acuna when he came to L.A., right, at late in the season, and they were basically tied, and then all of a sudden he went off, and he won the MVP going away.
I think it's huge, Rob, and it very well could be the determining factor. I mean, the interesting thing is for Lamar has 2 tough games coming up after this one. They got Miami next week and then Pittsburgh after that. Pittsburgh, people might think is not going to be a big game, but that's a division rival. They're a proud team, and they're still in the playoff hunt at this point. We'll see if they are at that point. So that's where even if Lamar is great or if he's poor in this game, he does have time to either raise his level as far as how he's viewed as an MVP candidate or lower it in the next 2 games. Brock Purdy, if he is great in this game and they win, let's say they win by 10 to 14 points and he throws for
3 touchdowns,
yards, 3
no
touchdowns,
picks.
no interception. I think he's going to win it.
No, I think if he does that against Baltimore and they're giving up 15 points a game, Chris. I think you're right.
Because that would have been like he has been great in the biggest games. Like Dallas, 250 some odd yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. Philly, 300 some odd yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. Jacksonville, nearly 300 yards, I believe. 3 touchdowns, no picks. And then if he were to, as you said, if he were to do this to the hands down best defense in the league, I think it'd be over. I think it'd be over. But I don't know that, they may not win this game. And so it's going to be very interesting. And Rob, the interesting thing too is that who do you think has the better narrative? Because Lamar's is the contract. They didn't want to give it to him. He held out. He stood his ground. He got his money. And he's obviously come back and played terrifically. He's had several of his best running backs go down with injury. He doesn't have an elite receiver. OBJ's old now. He's not elite. He doesn't have an elite receiver. He had his tight end, his number one target, go down. Right. And here they are, 11-3. Purdy, another great story in that he's Mr. Freaking Irrelevant. And nobody expected this. It was supposed to be Trey Lance. He's third string last year, and here he comes out of nowhere, and he's putting up numbers. I'm not saying obviously he's not better than these guys or even as good at this point, but he's putting up numbers that, Joe Montana and Steve Young didn't at times. And so both of them are really good stories. The way I said it, it sounds like Lamar's is even better.
Yeah, no, the way you set it up, right? And it is because
I didn't even do that on purpose.
But it's the truth, Chris. It just is. And the other thing that Lamar has working in his favor is that some people don't think that somebody on his team should be the MVP with McCaffrey. And then even Tom Brady chimed in, Chris. He didn't make a full-fledged endorsement, but he's mentioned him.
Yep.
So that tells you right there that it's not even on your own team do people think you're consensus, right?
Right. There's that is the truth. There are a lot of people that think Purdy. We've had some on the show, but there are a lot of people that think McCaffrey.
Yeah, and that says a lot, and I think that's the part that could hurt him. Ultimately,
they could end up splitting the vote too. That's what I
remember. We talked about that. Yep. Like you split when you have a teammate. You could split the vote. Sometimes people always talked about the Shaq and Kobe and a few MVPs or whatever. It hurt them. It hurt them.
Whether they split a vote or not, Rob, just knowing that, like, the voter, I'm a voter, and you look at, like, well, they got another guy that's awesome, so how much of their winning is really only Kobe or only Shaq? It does work that way.